Hello, this module deals with the judicial system, legal terminology, and citation. For many of you, this will be a review, but it's important to review because special education, what we do in the classroom, is governed by law. And so we want to review how the major special education law, which we follow, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act of 2004, or the Individuals with Disabilities Education Improvement Act, whatever you call it, is okay. Both are the same. How that became law. And so to review what you may have covered in high school or in an earlier political science class, you remember that we have three branches of government. We have the legislative branch, which creates our laws. We have the executive branch, which enforces our laws. And we have the judicial branch, which interprets our laws. And the judicial branch, once a law is the law of the land, such as the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, whenever there is additional court cases around special education, we have the judicial branch interpreting those cases. And if there's a lot of action, we move towards a reauthorization of that law. The major law, the major special education law, which we're talking about this semester, has been reauthorized a total of 3 times. So it's on its fourth reauthorization at this point. The first law of the land for special education started in 1975 as the Education for All Handicapped Children Act. In 1990, the name was changed with the second reauthorization to the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So how does a bill become a law? Again, if you remember, bills can be introduced in either our House or our Senate side. And there's a whole lot of committees bills go through before it will be signed off into law. So that an original bill, whether it originated in the House or the Senate, may not look the same by the time it ends up as law. And such was the case with I'm particularly thinking around the discipline amendments in one of the reauthorizations of IDEA. So the bill is sent to the president and signed and then becomes the law of the land, but may look vastly different from when it was first introduced. So just a couple more details on each of the levels. In the judicial system, we have a number of courts. We have appellate level courts, and we have the Supreme Court, which, as you know, decides which cases to hear. And there have been a number of Supreme Court rulings that apply to children with disabilities. And we will be discussing some of those this semester, and you will be reading about some of those. So again, just the federal court system, we have the United States Supreme Court, one court. We have 13 circuit courts and 98 federal district courts. This is a nice map which shows where the circuit courts are located, and obviously at the circuit level is a very, very high level, just under the Supreme Court. And I'm located in Pennsylvania, as most of you are. We are part of the Third Circuit, which encompasses New Jersey and Delaware. The actual court sits in Philadelphia. So what are the sources of law? Well, we certainly are governed by our Constitution. We have statutory law or statutes. We have case law. All of these may result in regulations which we need to follow. So to bring this to a concrete level where it affects teachers in classrooms, we have the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, a federal law which states receive funding if they adopt. And once the states adopt that law, they have to develop regulations. And it's this regulatory language which governs what we do in the classroom. And so if you were to look up, for example, Pennsylvania's regulations for the federal Individuals with Disabilities Education Act law, you would be looking up Chapter 14, which gives us our regulations for the law. Okay, let me backtrack here. Okay, so statutes. It gives us a little more information here. I guess the important point here that I'd like to make is that states may go beyond the federal laws as long as they don't conflict. An example is in Pennsylvania related to special education is that the federal law says at age 16 children need a transition plan as part of their individualized education planning. However, Pennsylvania has chosen to provide that beginning at age 14. So we can give more, we can't give less. In terms of regulations, the point that we've made is that these are guidelines for us to follow, so that the legislatures delegate the power to the state and local education agencies, primarily the state education agencies, to develop regulations. And then the local education agencies are responsible to train those professionals working with children with disabilities to follow those regulations. Case law is extremely important, and case law continues to be established every day because the case law comes from the hearing officers and the judges that are writing the decisions when there's a conflict and a particular situation ends up in due process or in a court. The legal system depends on these decisions because they establish precedents, and so judges rely on the decisions of those that have come before them. In terms of some of the terminology that you'll see, each court level might use different terminology, and here's an example of how the parties would be referred to at different court levels. We have the Supreme Court, the appellate level court, and the trial court here. Legal citations. Court decisions and legal citations are always written in the same way, so it makes it easy for you to understand. We always have the parties' names up front. We'll always have the volume number and the reporter, meaning where this particular case was reported. We'll always have the type of court in which it was heard. The page number, you'll find it on the year in which it was ruled upon. I've listed one Supreme Court decision here, the Board of Education versus Raleigh. So you know it's a Supreme Court because of the U.S., the United States Supreme Court. The reporter number, you'll find it in the page number and the year in which this was ruled. Statutes are it's also important to know the statute because obviously there's a number of them. So you have a title number, you know it's the United States Code, the section number, and any subsection letters. Regulation citation, pretty much the same way. This is the citation for the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, so we know it's in the 34th Code of Federal Regulations, and the section number begins at 300.550. This is another example of a case citation. Again, the parties involved. This was a high-level court. Can you see which court this took place in? If you said the 5th Circuit, so again we have 13 circuit courts, this was in the 5th Circuit. It gives us the name of the reporter it's in, the year it took place, 1989, and the page number we'll find it on. Just one thing about legal research, it's become a lot easier obviously with the internet, and so a number of these cases you can find on the internet, and the next 3 slides just give you some good resources in terms of websites that you can look to for help with finding cases, but also in helping you with the special education laws that we'll be speaking about. We have government resources as well as some additional online resources such as the Cornell University Law School Library.